Hello, BookTube. We recently had a massive winter storm here in Boston. We got very close to an inch of snow, and the temperatures plummeted into the mid 50s. So I wanted to give the Commonwealth of Massachusetts plenty of time to clean up after that catastrophe before I ventured outside to the Brattle, to the Brattle Bookshop here in Boston for my first time in 2024. That's a long time I've been going to the Brattle. If you start at 2024 and count backwards to the first year, that's a long time. But the state crews did their job, heroic as it is. They probably pulled multiple 24-hour shifts, but they did manage to make the sidewalks and roadways passable, despite the fact that Boston was hammered with snow and sleet and ice for, I don't know, the storm. It must have lasted a grueling 17 minutes. It was epic. It was one for the record books. So I bundled up and I went to the Brattle Bookshop first thing this morning. I had a couple of other errands to do in the area, and I wanted to see the shop again. Wanted to talk with everybody. Wanted to chat and also get a ton of books, which I did. I got a massive pile of books, and what better way to celebrate that fact than to talk about them with my imaginary BookTube friends. So, oh my god. This is a lot of books, so you might want to make yourself comfortable and settle in. We'll just chat about all of these. And I won't bother to look at the time. We'll go through them all until we're done. So the first one is something that I reread just last year and really enjoyed it. I think I talked about it on this channel. But I read it in a different format. So I got a duplicate, and this is Bantam Bach by Phoebe Atwood Taylor. This is an A.Z. Mayo murder mystery, and this is an old paperback, whereas the one I talked about was an old paperback as well, but not as old as this, from I think Mysterious Press or Foul Play Press or something like that. You'll know them when you see them. The American versions of these, whatever press it was, they did all of the A.Z. Mayo Phoebe Atwood Taylor novels. All in the same way. They're slightly oversized. They're white. They have really hideous cover artwork. I mean, this isn't anything to write home about, but the ones for that Mysterious Press or whatever it was, they were, was it Carolyn Graff? Well, whoever it was, their covers were unbelievably ugly. And also the books, I wouldn't care so much about ugly covers, but the books themselves were poorly made. The cover is barely glued at all to the text block. So you're either going to crack the spine, or far more likely, as happens to me all the time with those books, the front, back, and spine are just going to pop off the text. So I saw this at the shop and grabbed it because these I don't have, I think, more than one of these as an ebook, and they very much, as I learned last summer, they very much repay rereading. So I found that, and then we can talk about a couple of BookTube events for 2024, like, for instance, Dr. November, which is a long time from now, but it's all about espionage fiction and espionage nonfiction. And I found something here that fills a much-needed gap, as the phrase used to go, in my own Dr. November reading last year. I read a ton of espionage fiction. Tons of it. There's tons of it out there. I read a lot of nonfiction as well, but there was one thing that was noticeably disproportionate, and that was the lack of women. A lack of female authors. And I found one today. This is called The Lindon Affair by Martha Albrand. I don't know. I know nothing about this author. I've never heard of this book before, but it is. It's got agents in place. It is a thriller. Look at that. How's that for a cover photo? Well, they don't make them like that anymore, do they? She was born in Rostock, Germany. She spent much of her early life on the continent and several years in London before settling down on a farm in New Jersey. Good Lord. Who'd you offend? She's written 12 novels. At the time when this was written, she'd written 12 novels, and 9 of them were adventures of suspense dealing with the settings she knows well. And the one that's mentioned here is A Call from Austria. So, The Lindon Affair. I will chuck it on the pile. I don't have any qualms about buying books if they're at the Brattle that I'm not going to read immediately, because they are going to get read. They aren't going to sit on my shelf for years. I bought The Lindon Affair for a BookTube event. I'm not in any pressing need to read espionage fiction until Dr. November. And then these next 4, they are the last of the mass market paperbacks, all also for a BookTube event. This is much closer. A much closer BookTube event, of course, is June on the Range, created by Michael K. Vaughan, designed to celebrate Westerns. And as I did last year, so too I will do this year. I will simply grab Westerns and chuck them on the pile. I will not read them until June on the Range. So I found 4 of them. Found one from Alan LeMay. This is called Gunsight Trail. He was a 2-gun man and built for trouble. So there you go. This is the Lazy M Ranch was battling for survival. Outside Earl Shaw's hired gunmen poured a withering volley of bullets into the stone pump house that alone stood between Oliver Major's cowpunchers and destruction. The siege was the culmination of a long and bitter feud between Shaw and Major for control of Buckhorn Valley. Okay, all right. And then we have something by Will Brown called The Kelly Man. He never said much. His gun did the talking. And I get these, whenever I find these, they're almost always well-loved paperbacks. One of the things I love about Westerns as a genre is that there's no pretension about it at all. So if you find a used Western novel, almost certainly it's going to be something that somebody has read. Very much read. They might not have loved it. It might not be anything to love, but they won't have pretended to read it, which is one of the things I love about some of the subgenres of fiction. Murder mysteries, run-of-the-mill murder mysteries is another example like that. There's almost no bragging rights to them, and of course romance. Good Lord. The thing I like about romance, and especially category romance, and murder mysteries, dime a dozen murder mysteries, not high-profile things, and also these old Western novels. How much was this? 35 cents. One of the things I love about them is that they were bought in earnest. They were read in earnest. There's no pretension about them at all. So what do we have here? He rode quietly into the town he'd left as a boy. They saw the long scar on his face. There we go. And the gun strapped to his thigh. But they couldn't see what was inside him. The anger that brought him back after all these years to find a man he had to kill. Okay, fantastic. Then what do we have next here? Okay, all right, this one surprised me. I got it just for, there are a couple of things here in this Brattle haul that I got for the cover. I am not inhuman. I am as prone to cover buys as the next guy. This is William McLeod Rain. I know I've read this author before for June on the Range, and this is called The Border Breed. Death eyed him from the muzzle of a smoking Colt. He knew too much. If there's one thing I've learned about the protagonists of Western novels, it's that it's never accurate to say he knew too much. But look at him. He's in the water. He's up to his chin in the water. That's what it looks like to me anyway. I think he's up to his chin in water, somehow still keeping his hat on. I'll be very interested to find out what the story is here. These old Penguin pocket books really hold up. They really do. This is what? Oh, I didn't know this. The inside cover says that their penguin colophon is named Gertrude. I didn't know that. Or if I did, I forgot it. What is the date on this? 1935. It's almost 100 years old. And I guarantee you that it will look just like this when I'm done reading it. They're incredibly tough. And then the last of the June on the Range books that I got. I'm not even going to think about these. I'm not going to think about any of these mass market paperbacks. I'm trying to chuck them on the pile and give them their day down the line. Because the Phoebe Atwood Taylor book, I don't think I'll reread it in 2024 since I just reread it in 2023. But it also has a BookTube event, March Mystery Madness. So I'm just going to chuck all these on the pile. But this one is by Robert McLeod. That's another name that's very familiar to me. I'm pretty sure I've read this author, but I don't think I've read this book. It's called The Mule Skinner. With a gun and a whip and a yell that made the air turn blue, he was one wild heller who didn't take no for an answer. Among the savage, ceaseless horizons of this godforsaken country, nobody gave a damn who or what a man really was. All that counted was what he seemed to be. and Ben Davis seemed to be a walking, breathing challenge to every brawling drifter with a pair of itchy fists and a hot gun hand. He was the raw-boned Mule Skinner, too big to resist, too good to beat, and just too stubborn to die. So he doesn't take no for an answer, but he's a Mule Skinner, which means that he does take no for an answer from his boss. But there's the cover, there is the whip, and there is the gun, and there is the mouth, I suppose. So it's going to be a lot of fun. These things are always a lot of fun. I'm wondering about the feng shui here now because I've got a sleepy little bean. So I'm wondering we're going to, because we've got a ton of books to go. Here, let's move these aside and see if we can make room that way. All right, now these next four are battered old nautical titles from the middle of the 20th century. I saw them all together and I assumed initially that it meant that Mark Richardson had died. But I went online and checked for a statewide day of Thanksgiving in Vermont, and there wasn't any. So I'm assuming he's still alive, still kicking along, season by season, truck by truck. But I found a bunch of books that look like something that would go get donated to his library for their annual sale. One is by the Nova Scotia writer Thomas Brattle, and this is Tidefall. Rather a pretty thing. This is a novel. There is our author. He wrote a ton of books. I've never read any of them. Then we have, this is by Raoul Foire. This is The Spear in the Sand. Kind of a modern day Robinson Crusoe. Man finds himself stranded on an island. And has to figure out what to do there. What to do with himself there. Then we have, let's see here, Darwin Tail Hat. Darwin Tail Hat. This is The Mission of Jeremy Ptolemy. And I'm assuming that's Jeremy right there, and it looks to me like he's contemplating a couple of missions. We shall see. These are all, look at the author. These are all very much of a type, these books. They've all seen better days, and obviously came from the same person. And then finally, this last one is by George Fielding Elliot, and it is Caleb Pettingill, USN. But historical USN. There's our author checking on nautical maps. A marvelous yarn. I imagine these are all marvelous yarns. Concerning young Mr. Caleb Pettingill of New England, who commands a vessel in the Union Navy during the Civil War, whose flamboyant charm is irresistible to women, and who believes passionately not only in the Union cause, but also in the revolutionary new uses of steam, ironclad ships, explosive shells, and rifled guns. In this impetuous and ambitious young officer, the author has created a personality that stands with Captain Horatio Hornblower as one of the strongest and most appealing characters in historical fiction. And, of course, it has maps. So there you go, Captain Pettingill. Okay, and then, all right, let's move on here to The New Yorker. The New Yorker, of course, you all know, even if you don't live in America, is an American magazine. It's been around forever. Almost a century. And I love The New Yorker. I've always loved The New Yorker, even when it irritates the crap out of me. I still love it. And I know a lot about it. It's a weird thing. Magazines usually last 10 or 20 years. It's a weird thing that The New Yorker has been so sui generis for so long. I still subscribe to it, even though it's $10 an issue now. And I still love it. Mostly, I still love it. And I've been doing a lot of thinking about it because I sank myself recently deep into William Maxwell. Deep into letters, correspondence with everybody, histories of The New Yorker, his fiction for my sins, all kinds of stuff about William Maxwell, who for years and years and years was the kind of ghost in the machine at The New Yorker. Other more high-profile, more assertive, and more flamboyant editors came and went while he held down a desk and set the tone for New Yorker fiction. New Yorker was most famous for its fiction. And at the Brattle today, out in the lot, I noticed a book that I've never held it in my hand before. I've only heard about it. It has a title that you remember. I've never actually seen it, much less owned a copy for $1. And it is a collection of stories by the guy who was that presiding ghost of fiction at The New Yorker before William Maxwell. His name is John Mosher, and he was there right at the beginning. I mean, not literally when they opened the doors of the New Yorker, but almost right from the 1920s. He was setting the tone of, editorially speaking, in terms of what are we going to do as a magazine when we get fiction submissions. Is it going to be all hands on deck? Is it going to be very hands-on in terms of editing? What kind of relationship are we going to have with authors? All authors. And what kind of fiction are we going to produce? The poobahs at the New Yorker for 100 years have been saying there's no such thing as a, quote, New Yorker story. But they say that because they know it's true. There is such a thing as a New Yorker story. Maybe not anymore, but for 80 years, 60 years, certainly throughout the 20th century, there was definitely such a thing as a New Yorker story. And if that's true, it's true because of Moshe, as much as anybody. And I found his collection of stories. He wrote a lot of stories himself. This is called Celibate at Twilight. And it has, not only does it have his stories, but it also, let me get you an example. It's illustrated. There are illustrations all throughout by the New Yorker artist Mary Petty. See, there we go. And I am a huge fan of Mary Petty. I would very much like to come across at the Brattle a collection of her cartoons. I know there is at least one. But she's all over the collection of New Yorker cartoons that I have. So I now have Celebrate at Twilight. I don't think I've read more than one John Mosher short story in my life. Because over the years, over the decades, there have been New Yorker anthologies of fiction. And he's in some of the earlier ones of those. But reading a whole book of his, especially if as I like to do with short story collections, I read it from front to back, so that I really get a sense of what it is that preoccupies the author. Because, of course, keep in mind, with short story collections, they weren't written front to back. So if you read them front to back, you have to keep that in mind or you're being unfair. But if you keep that in mind, it's perfectly fair to notice what kinds of things interest an author, what kinds of situations the author goes back for. This is going to be a lot of fun. I now have a copy of Celebrate at Twilight. Can't believe that. Then this next one is a classic. I've had it in paperback a million times. I've had it in hardcover a million times. I've had it in trade paperback a million times. I'm pretty sure, I haven't done a stem to stern search, but I'm pretty sure I don't have a copy of it at the moment. So for $1, I grabbed it. It's all Leopold. It's his great book, Sand County Almanac. This is a hardcover. It's got illustrations as well. Let me find you one of those so that you... This is absolutely first-rate nature writing. Just absolutely first-rate. Wonderful. Yeah, there we go. That's from a great chapter that is set partially in Iowa. Just fantastic stuff. The biggest problem that I will have with finding a nice hardcover of Sand County Almanac will be the huge temptation to just reread this. I don't know how many times I've read it. It is absolutely enchanting. But always worth another reread. I could throw it on the pile for tonight or this afternoon. It looks like it's going to be a very blustery evening here in Boston. High winds and pelting downpours of rain. We'll see. We'll see if that happens. All of the weather forecasters were predicting a foot of snow in Boston, and they were off by a foot of snow. So if they're all universally wrong about this, well, I'll find out tonight. It might be, but if they're not wrong, it could be really good reading weather. Not that I need any weather to help me. It's always good reading weather for me. Then this next one, this is by George Walton. I was happy to find a copy of this. I love this book. Grim subject, but I love it. This is called Fearless and Free, and it is a history of the Seminole Indian War here in America. And it's the best history of that war. It's not long, not a doorstep thing at all. We have another account of a war in this Brattle Hall that's 3 times this long. But this is so good. Just so good. A horrible subject, but a really, really good book. So very happy. I never see it used. I think this might be the first time I've ever seen it used. So happy to find it. Then this next one, oh my, who are you? The University of California Press. I have this book. I don't have this book, but I have this subject matter in detail. But I never in a million years thought I would see this. You often see these University of California editions that look just like this for the collected works of Herman Melville. But I've never seen this. This is the complete works of the Pearl poet, the Gawain poet. and it's bilingual, so it's facing pages. You get the Middle English, and you also get contemporary translation, and tons of notes. A third of the book is annotation, which is fantastic. You have cleanness here. You have the pearl. I think this has Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Yeah, it does. They even include St. Erkenwald, even though it's contested whether or not this poet wrote St. Erkenwald. They include it anyway, and that's great, because I'm sure that there'll be a lot of fascinating critical stuff about it that I don't know. And we would like more than anything to put a name on this book. This person, whoever it was a contemporary of John Gower, contemporary of Geoffrey Chaucer. We know their names, but we don't know who this poet is. We make a lot of surmises from the poetry itself. This was an intelligent, an educated person, and probably also a cultured person. But some weird things are going on here. You read the writing of this period, the so-called Ricardian period, Richard II. You read writings of this period from the famous authors who we know by name. Their palette of literary references and callbacks and allusions is very similar, one to the next. Virtually impossible to tell the difference between that set of literary antecedents, for instance, and between Chaucer and Gower, who were friends. It is virtually impossible to tell the difference between that, what do I even want to call it, a lingua franca, their frame of references. Whereas this poet seems almost uninterested in that sort of thing. Whether posturing or score or point scoring or anything else, whoever this poet was seems almost uninterested in that. And that makes it fascinating. I firmly believe that gives, for instance, Gawain and the Green Knight, its strange feral appeal. This is going to be a joy to go through. Not so much because I have two other volumes that are the complete works of the Gawain poet. Here it's called the Pearl Poet. Same person, probably. I have two other works like that, but this will be brand new annotations. This is a huge introduction and huge notes at the end. So that'll be the main reason that I go through it. Okay, let's do some biographies. let's do some biographies. I found this from James Tracy. I don't think I know this book. Do I know you? When did you come out? This is also the University of California Press. 1996. Okay, so I wasn't back in the reviewing game, but I was also done with writing about this person, so I may have missed this. But this is Erasmus of the Low Countries. This is a biography. You're now seeing double. This is a biography of the Dutch humanist Erasmus, who would have bridled quite a bit at a title of the book being Erasmus of the Low Countries. He would have bridled quite a bit at that. But this isn't long. I very much want a 1,000-page biography of Erasmus. Certainly he left a gigantic body of primary sources that we could use. There have been 2-volume biographies of him, and there were big biographies of him a century and a half ago, more than that. But it would really be nice if there were a 1,000-page, wonderful, spry biography of him that not only conveys the man, we know so much about what he was like as a man, as a person, but also conveys the centrality of the man, how important his writing was. And I know I can already hear that some of you are going to be saying, why don't you write that book? So let's just move on, shall we? This next one, this is fascinating. I've never found this in the wild either. Now, the author, Irving Stone, I think is largely dead. I mean, he is dead. He has to be dead. But his works, I think, are largely dead. That's a shame. His novels are really good, including, but not limited to, the gigantic historical doorstops that he did. He did a string of gigantic historical doorstop novels that are wonderful. A lot of the stuff that he wrote that wasn't historical fiction is also wonderful. But probably in his lifetime, he was most famous for The Agony of the Ecstasy, a long novel of his about Michelangelo. And probably that fame comes from the fact that it was made into a movie starring Charlton Heston and Rex Harrison. That is absolutely wonderful. It is wonderful to watch. When will you make an end? But another book of his that was really popular was a novel called Lust for Life that he did about Vincent van Gogh. And he also did a companion, sort of a parallel companion book called Dear Theo, that was a collection of Van Gogh's letters. Just independent. It was independent and parallel to Lust for Life. And it was a hit. Dear Theo was a hit, a huge hit, unexpectedly. And so he did that same thing again. He went back to Michelangelo and did that same thing again. I, Michelangelo, sculptor. Where he and his wife just go through the letters of Michelangelo and arrange them chronologically with bridging sections. So here you get the artwork as well. But see, you get letters here, but you also get bridging sections to give you context. In a way, Michelangelo wrote letters for 60 years, so we have a ton of material to work with, and a lot of the responses are also saved. So in a way, this is a great way to do a biography. Really, do we need much more than this? Can we have the letters, footnotes to the letters, and bridging sections to the letters, and that's all? Imagine what you could do with that for Erasmus. That was done for Erasmus in the 19th century, early 20th century. Maybe we don't have the stomach for it anymore, or it takes too much work. But I, again, have never held this in my hand. I knew that it existed, but I've never read it. And that's fascinating. I don't think at the moment that I have a copy of The Agony of the Ecstasy, which is kind of wild. Considering how popular it was, that's kind of wild. It's also fairly good. It's also very. I don't think The Agony of the Ecstasy is my favorite of Irving Stone's big historical doorstopper novels. He did a few of those. Lust for Life definitely is not. And The Agony of the Ecstasy I don't think is either. I'm pretty sure that my favorite is The Origin, the big novel that he did on Charles Darwin. I'm pretty sure that's my favorite. But then the last of the biographies is this. This is Jean Overton Fuller, and it's her biography of Sir Francis Bacon. And it's, again, not a long thing. I got no doorstopper biographies today. But I've read this. I read this out of a library. Eons ago. My mind is saying that I read this out of an Iowa library. Could that be true? Yes, it could be true. Okay. Yeah, I did read this out of an Iowa library, but not this copy. This copy is a review copy from Dutton. Somebody sent this. This used to be all you got. We would appreciate receiving 2 copies of your review. Please observe publication date, which was October 25th, 1982. And the hardcover was $16. And once upon a time, those of you who've been watching this channel, you know that I get books in the mail from publishers, and I get the Douay Bible with them now, 6 or 7 pages of close-typed guidance for my poor soul. Whereas once upon a time, this is all you got. You just got a little sheet of paper. Please observe the publication date. Don't run the review before the book, and send us a couple of copies in case we want to use it for a blurb. No internet. So this is all you got. Just that. And if you were a book section editor, that was all you had to go on. But I only have one other Francis Bacon biography. There've been a few. And some of them have been quite good. They're never long. They're never as long as I want them to be. The longest Francis Bacon biography I have is the one other one I have here, which is a Francis Bacon biography dedicated to proving that he was William Shakespeare. So it has a little bit of an agenda. This thing will not. It's got a little bit of schmutz on the cover, but I have a feeling it's the kind of schmutz that is the residue of a sticker. Somebody put a sticker on this thing, I think. And one of the things that I've learned about that kind of schmutz on the cover is if it's sticker residue, you don't really need to sweat it all that much because it's not designed to be in contact with the air. So if the sticker is gone but the residue remains, if you leave it for a while, it'll dry out. You'll be able to just rub it off with your thumb. So those were the biographies. Naturally, I had to get biographies when I sent the Brattle. But we're not done. No, we're just going to keep barreling on here. My feng shui is getting more and more disastrous, but the baby is sleeping peacefully. Then this next one it's a novel I've read many times. And I don't like it. So you might be saying, well, why would you get it again? Why would you do that? It is one of those novels, maybe even one of those authors, that bugs me that I don't like. Something feels wrong about not liking it. I don't know what. It's not that I distrust my instincts. My instincts, as you all know, are infallible. But something bothers me the fact that I have never loved this author or even liked this author bothers me. So when fate nudges me, when I see an example, whether it's Steinbeck or whoever, if it's an author that I have just clean decided is not good, okay, fine. Then there's no temptation. There's no nagging. If it's an author that I've clean decided might be good, but is definitely not for me, again, no problem, no snagging. But there is a category of authors where I don't like them, and I don't think they're for me, but those things are not carved in stone. The author in this case is D.H. Lawrence. And I found a copy of his least prurient masterpiece. He was big into pushing the boundaries of obscenity laws, and that bores me. And this is the first of his I think his third novel, and the first one to flirt with that in a way. And so probably those elements, the elements that I think are juvenile and sort of pimple picking, they're probably at their least prominent in this book. So I'm going to give it another try. This is Sons and Lovers. And the thing that pushed me, I'm not sure that I would have grabbed it otherwise. The thing that pushed me is this is a Reader's Digest edition of Sons and Lovers that I have never seen or even heard of. I thought I had seen every Reader's Digest edition that existed, but I have never seen this one. So I grabbed it. I will give it another try. I will give Sons and Lovers another try. I don't like autofiction. I don't like the way D.H. Lawrence writes, his actual prose. I used to have this argument all the time with an old bookish friend of mine. All the time. Saying, I'm not even talking right now about the high, Parnassian heights that you're talking about. I'm talking simply about sentences. He's repeating words ineptly. He's using constructions ineptly. Why isn't that enough to damn him? Well, you have to look at the deeper meaning. See, you got your deeper meaning right here. But I'm going to give it a try. I'm going to give this another try. Sons and Lovers. Then I found a book. It's a UK hardcover. I don't know if I've ever seen this in an American hardcover. I'm not sure that I remember what it looks like. And I'm not sure that I'll be keeping it. I'm not 100% sure that it won't be winging its way out the door. This is Dominic Leaven, who's fantastic. I absolutely love his work. And this is a book of his that I have not read. It's called Towards the Flame, Empire, War, and the End of Tsarist Russia. And you've got a dead horse on the cover. This is by Alan Lane, and it's got blurbs from The Economist. That's the Andrew Roberts and also Simon Sebag Montefiore. And oh, goodness gracious. Oh, this was some sort of official parade. Is that right? Did that horse keel over in an official parade? Are you going to tell me? An act of terrorism. Oh, right. Okay. This is a photograph of, I think a bomb went off. I don't know. I'm not off the top of my head. Oh, wow. Oh, great. Somebody put in clippings. To this thing. Oh, fantastic. So what did we have here? William Anthony Hay reviewed this for, looks like the TLS. Is that right? Oh, no, this is New York Times. Okay. And the other book reviewed was Sicily by John Julius Norwich. Great. All right. Well, somebody put in clips here. That's fantastic. I will read the clips, of course, from my brethren critics. But I don't know that I'll be keeping this. I might be sending this out to Micah Cummins. I don't think he has this. I keep meaning to get an exhaustive, updated list of stuff from him on Russia that he has or that he doesn't have, that he wants. Micah and I are edging each other closer and closer to a Romeo and Juliet style suicide pact where we mutually buy tech we don't need. We're both egging each other, elbowing each other on to get the iPad Mini 6, which is ironic in a number of ways. I mean, Micah doesn't need any more new tech any more than I do, and also we're gonna encourage each other and then delay and then encourage each other and then delay until I'm sure there's an iPad Mini 7 that's on the drawing board right now. But I don't know if he has this or not. I will email him and see. If he doesn't, I will give it a read and then I will send it along. Because, again, I mean, I love this author, and I love this subject matter as well. But I will see this book again, and Micah might not. You might not. People might not see any of these things again. That sort of makes it, incumbent on me to send these things out. I will see them again. The Brattle will definitely provide, whereas most people don't have an equivalent. So then we're just going to keep barreling on here. I'm going to keep going. I found this thing this was $1, so I grabbed it. I've never seen it before, and it fascinates me. This is by David Dickinson, and it is The Daring Young Men, and it's the story of the American Pre-Raphaelites. There's an opening chapter on the Pre-Raphaelites in England called The British Brotherhood. Oh, no, okay, no. So the there's Jesus. Well, this is another university press, 1953 Indiana University Press. So the author starts off with describing the Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood, the Pre-Raphaelite movement, and I love the Pre-Raphaelites. I absolutely love them, but I don't know how much of their American counterparts I know all that well. I went to, if I remember correctly, an American exhibit at, I want to say, the Museum of Fine Arts in New York 30 years ago, of American Pre-Raphaelites. I could swear I remember that, and I remember it being eye-opening. But when did this thing come out? 1953. So I doubt that I'm off by that far. But a subject I don't know anything about, like I always say, because it's the Brattle, you can take a gamble. You can take a risk on something that you've never heard of. That you might not like it at all. It might, in my case, it won't just sit there. So I might not like it is one thing. But the other thing that a lot of people say when they go use bookstore hunting, they say both I might not like it and also it might sit unread. It's not going to sit unread. I might not like it. It might not be a keeper. But there was the only impediment to getting it and giving it a try was lugging it back here, since I no longer have a coterie of young weightlifters to lug things for me. Those were the days. And then we'll finish up, believe it or not. We're at the end here with a huge thing, the biggest hardcover that I got today. But I have an ebook of this, but this is one that I want in hardcover. So I can tip things inside it. I can read sections of it again. I don't mind the duplication between this and an ebook in this particular case. And I didn't want a trade paperback. I've had this in trade paperback, and it doesn't hold up well. It's too big. It's too fat a book. This is the great Robert Leckie, the great military historian Robert Leckie, and this is his one-volume book on the American Civil War, None Died in Vain. Never have I understood that title. Lots and lots of people died in vain in the American Civil War, but this is terrific. He is so good. When did this book come out? Just curious to know. When did you appear? 1990, the year I returned. This is terrific. Absolutely terrific. I don't know that it's the best one-volume biography of one-volume history of the American Civil War, but it's right up there. And I saw a perfect condition hardcover for, I think this was $3, so I grabbed it. I grabbed it. I want this on the shelf in addition to having an ebook. And there you go. That was my first Brattle haul of 2024. Technically, still following the pattern of so many other earlier Brattle book hauls, in that it was technically made in advance of a storm. If the weather forecasters are correct about the weather that is coming to Boston today, it could be really bad. The wind gusts could be really strong, and it's going to pour rain. Inches and inches and inches of rain. So, perfect example of battening down the hatches. I will do it just in case it happens. I will make sure that everything is right. Of course, I'm facing an immense battle of wills with the Bean, who does not like to go outside in inclement weather. Even wind is starting to bother her, and rain is a hard no. So I either need to start disappointing her a lot more by the older she gets, taking her out in the rain and the wind anyway, or I maybe need to invest in dog pads. Do any of you know anything about that? There's a lot of small breed dog owners, which I guess I am now. Doesn't feel like a small breed at all, but a lot of small breed dog owners get doggy pads, pee pads. You lay them down, you train the dog to go on that pad, and then they can go anytime they want. The pad, I guess, absorbs and also cuts down on odor. Sort of like a cat bed. Might have to look into that. I never thought in a million years that I would, but when Frida pees, it's barely noticeable, so it would work for her. I don't know. We shall see. But anyway, enough of pee pads. Let's talk about books. So let's try a Steve Pyramid, our first of the year. None Died in Vain by Robert Leckie. Cannot recommend it strongly enough. Where are we going to go here? We have Sons and Lovers by D.H. Lawrence. I don't recommend it at all. Why did I get it? We have The Daring Young Men about... Oh, God help us. Oh, my God. The Daring Young Men about American pre-Raphaelites. We have Towards the Flame about the end of Tsarist Russia. We have I, Michelangelo Sculptor, the Michelangelo equivalent of Dear Theo. A lot of you will know Dear Theo. We have a biography of Sir Francis Bacon. I have no idea how good it is. I wish I could find more of Gene Fuller's stuff. She wrote a lot of other books, and I've almost never encountered any of them. I would even want to read her Jack the Ripper book, because long before Patricia Cornwell did it, she also said that the painter Sickert was Jack the Ripper, an obviously dumb theory that has now had two prominent authors write books about it. I'd love to find it anyway. And also a biography of Erasmus. Not every day that I find one of those. Then the collected works of the Pearl Poet in a hugely annotated academic press volume. We have Fearless and Free, The Seminole Indian War. We have Sand County Almanac in a hardcover. We have Celibate at Twilight by the guy who created the mold for New Yorker fiction. We have all this Mark Richardson stuff. We have Captain Pettingill. We have The Mission of Geoffrey Ptolemy. There's Mark in the South Seas. We have The Spear in the Sand and Tidefall. So that's kind of a set. Seen better days. And then a bunch of mass market paperbacks. We have a murder mystery, Dr. November pick, and 4 westerns that are just going to go on the pile. I've got a ton of western ebooks, a ton of them. And now I have a fairly sizable amount of unread western mass market paperbacks all ready for June. so there you go. That was the Brattle Bookshop. Ton of fun, wonderful visit, and a lot of books to stock up for the storm. A lot of books that I didn't need. So I'll wrap this up for now, and I'll see you all soon. Thank you, BookTube.